My name is Randy Howell, and you're listening to the Faith and Fishing Podcast.
Welcome to the Faith and Fishing Podcast. I'm Cam.
And I'm Robert. In every episode, we're bringing you faith stories and fishing memories from some amazing members of the fishing community.
So join us as we shed a positive light on all things faith and fishing. Hey y'all, welcome back to the Faith and Fishing Podcast. I'm Cam.
Hey, and I'm Robert.
And this is going to be probably a bit of a shorter episode, but we are going to kind of talk about a couple things that went on in our past weekend. So before we do that, Robert, how you doing, man?
Oh, doing good. Busy week, kids ball, and the tournament last weekend, and then we also had youth merge at our church. So we had kids at our house, and I snuck out for a couple hours to fish the tournament so I could get some points, and put together a video for that for the church. So it was a busy weekend, and then works nonstop. What about you?
Man, the same in terms of craziness. I cannot believe how late in the week it already is. But yeah, we like you said, we had that tournament, and just it's been that kind of week where it's just been nonstop. So yeah, I know we just started, but let's go ahead and thank a couple sponsors, and then we're going to talk about that tournament, man.
Sounds good.
Few things ruin your day on the water as bad as losing gear. But with the retrieval devices for fishing rods, action cams, bow fishing bows, and more from Save Your Outdoors, you don't have to let dropping your stuff ruin your day because you can get it back. The pressure-sensitive filter keeps water from rain and quick dips in the water out, but it lets water in when your gear goes overboard to release a float attached to your gear by 60 feet of line so you can get it back. Go to SaveYourOutdoors.com to learn more and try some for yourself, and use promo code FNFP15 to save 15% on your order. That's SaveYourOutdoors.com and promo code FNFP15. If finesse fishing is your comfort zone, something you want to learn better this year, or just something you like to tie on as a Hail Mary pass, Jade's Jigs has everything you need and more, and it's all eco-friendly and lead-free. With an awesome selection of baits and colors, they've got a variety of techniques covered for you. Finesse jigs, underspins, Nico weights, Ned rigs, and more are all waiting for you at jadesjigs.com. And while you're there, use promo code FNF10 for 10% off your purchase. That's jadesjigs.com and promo code FNF10 for 10% off. All right, so this past weekend was the season opener for Central Carolina Kayak Fishing. CCKF, and it was an interesting one. Robert, you want to kind of start things off from your perspective?
Sure, yeah. So at the beginning of the year, for those of you not familiar with North Carolina, there are what I would consider three major local clubs, one out of Charlotte, which is Queen City, and then there's one out of Greensboro, which is about maybe headquartered an hour away from where Cam and I live. Excuse me. And then one that's Central Carolina Kayak Fishing, which is basically mostly Raleigh Lakes. So the two that I normally fish is the CKA, which is Carolina Kayak Angling out of Greensboro, and then CCKF, which is out of Sanford, Raleigh. So at the beginning of the year, I kind of charted all of the baseball tournaments and softball tournaments and schedules that I had, and I put all those on the calendar for the year. And then I put all of the Queen City, all of the CKA and CCKF tournaments on there. And I also did the Hobies and the BASS kayak tournaments to see what lined up and what didn't line up. So for me, the one that I'm trying to do the Angler of the Year, trying to qualify and get in the top. I think there's going to be 11 or 12 that will go from CCKF to qualify for the state tournament, to qualify for the Bassmasters for next year, which actually this year's is going on now, just finished up today. We don't know who won that yet, but to try to qualify for that. So the one that matched up the best for me, long story long, was CCKF. So having said that, after I scheduled all that out, I volunteered myself to video merge for our church, which is a youth weekend that all the kids are divided up between houses, and they spend the weekend together. And then a lot of other churches combine youth groups on several churches. They all get together, have a big fun weekend. Our youth pastor asked if I could help with the video and the editing on that to make a short video for that. So I was like, yeah, that's fine. So I had to figure out a way to fish that tournament and do the video for church. So I told my wife, I was like, look, I'm going to go. And if I can catch one fish, I know that'll get me like around mid pack or something. Or maybe, even if I catch one and I'm 40th place, that will still give me around 220 points, which won't put me out of that race. Whereas if I didn't fish it, I would have got 0 if I didn't go at all. If you go and you show up, you get 100 for showing up. So I think even with the smaller number of anglers this year, even if you have one tournament that you have a 100, you might put yourself out of that. So I really wanted to go and catch one fish, and I had about an hour and a half to do that. So I rolled up, no pre-fishing, no nothing. I really didn't even fish any history because I usually fish the Eno, but it rained the night before. I was afraid that was going to get too blown out. So I put in an Upper Barton along with about 100 boats and about 40 other kayaks. That was the biggest traffic jam. Well, not the biggest, but that was a pretty large traffic jam trying to get all the boats and kayaks in at Upper Barton. I got in about 7:13. Lines in was 7:15. So I went over to the riprap that was right by the bridge by the boat dock at like 7:17. Caught a 13 and I think a half or 13 and a quarter on a shaky head. And then I was good to go. I did stay and fish for like another hour and a half. I did not get any more bites. If I did, it was so subtle that I thought it was the bottom. But I did catch the one. I think I ended up like 42nd, maybe somewhere. I'm in the 40s somewhere.
Right.
But
So yeah, I'm gonna tell my version of it now. So this this was my first time ever fishing falls, and I don't know that Barton's is going to be where I launch from ever again. If it is, it's probably going to be like the summertime at night. Um, Man, what a mess! There were, like you said, there were so many kayaks and so many boats. And like whenever I went over the bridge, I was like, oh my goodness, I
yeah,
could just see nothing but headlights and taillights just waiting. So I park in the gravel and unload onto my cart and go down and do my best to I go down the boat ramp and then like pull my kayak out over to the little bit of a beach area that there was, grab my cart. I use a bike lock to just like lock it to a tree.
oh, was that your cart? Your cart
Yeah,
was right by the ramp. I was like,
yeah,
I didn't know it was locked up. I was like, dang, somebody's pretty ballsy leaving that right by the ramp. I didn't see the bike lock on it.
yeah. So
Good idea.
uh, that way I didn't have to walk all the way
Yeah,
back up.
that's a hike.
It is, especially uphill like that.
Yeah.
Um, So I get on the water and I'm just kind of watching and just kind of chuckling to myself at all of the ridiculousness and listening to uh, I don't know what tournament trail it was that they had the 12 bass boats for, but they were kind of like doing like a megaphone kind of
Yeah,
like
I heard them.
little something that they were doing. So 7 o'clock hits, I paddle over, and I'm the whole time I'm watching. I'm watching my graph, and I'm like, I should probably fish right here by the ramp, which is where you caught yours.
Yeah.
But I come out and I get right in front of right outside of the bridge, and I look down on my graph, and it's just spaghetti. Like these bass are like they're busting on top. There's carp rolling. I'm like, man, this could be it. This could be it. So I kind of stage up right there, and there was one other kayaker that came up and he said, "Hey, are you fishing this side or this side?" I was like, "I'm actually going to stay right here." So he kind of waited, and he was gonna take one side over there where the wood is, and I'm waiting, and then the bass boats have their launch, and like four of them go over right over top of me, and all the activity on my graph dies. And I was like, oh, this could have been it. This could have been it. But I go and I'm throwing my crankbait, I'm throwing my spinner bait, and I'm going down that riprap. And at this point, I had already lost one rock crawler. I lost two Spro rock crawlers this trip, so that was near about my entry fee in lost gear. Um, but I'm going and I cast the spinner bait and I'm kind of slow rolling it. And I look over to my right and I'm like, I bet that's Robert. That looks like Robert. And then I hear soft plastics rock, moving baits suck. I was like, yeah, that's Robert.
Yeah, I
And
saw
you
you over there
you had
fishing.
already caught one, and I was like,
Yeah,
man, um, if he could stay longer than he can, he's gonna do okay. But nobody that launched from Barton's did
no.
okay. All the activity was up at the northern end of the lake, but I
Mhm.
went and kind of explored all the way down as far as I could go, just looking for some deeper water that was not in the main lake, and there just wasn't any. Um, but I did end up about 11:30 or so. I caught one on a shaky head,
Yay.
as you know, uh, soft plastic. So uh, yeah, whenever I fish from the bank a lot, I was um, I was throwing mostly finesse stuff, wacky worms, shaky heads. Shaky head was one of my first like go tos. That was not a rooster tail, panther martin. Um, so it's just it's hard in a paddle kayak in the wind to stay where you want to stay, um, and fish finesse,
Yeah.
and do it the right way. So ended up getting beat up by the wind pretty bad. Um, the One of our guys ended up getting like swiped by a bass boat, um, and like he didn't get hit by the bass boat, but ended up like the boat was so close that it knocked gear off his kayak, and he
Oh wow.
lost some gear, and so that
I
was
didn't
not
know
fun to hear. I got a notification from Tourney X that said, be on the lookout for this the silver Triton, with with the black motor cover or whatever. So didn't know what that was all about until weigh in. But um, shout out to Hank Bajan, who ended up winning that one. Um, well deserved. Nice to see a paddle kayak up at the top. That made me feel good. But and just to see him do well is always a treat. He's such a good guy.
Yeah, he is.
Shout out to him, and shout out to Mike. I don't even know Mike's last name. Mike was the angler that came up and asked, which way are you going? And we ended up fishing kind of back and forth with each other, and we ended up pulling out of the launch at the same time. And I ended up trying to get my kayak on the cart over that gravel or over that chunk rock, and hit a root just right and dumped my kayak. And he helped me pick it back up and um, get it up to where I could wheel it back to the car. So shout out to him, stand up guy. I ended up helping him out as well. He's got an autopilot 13 and a half from Old Town. You want to talk about a
I
heavy
was gonna say it's probably
beast
heavy.
of a boat.
Yeah.
My goodness, I think he said it was something like 150 pounds.
Yeah,
And
probably so.
goodness
Yeah.
gracious.
That Bonafide's probably close to that once you get the motor, the trolling motor on the front, plus a battery, and you got your graph, and it gets heavy real quick.
But I will say all those guys with the autopilot and you with your spot lock and stuff, I don't know how y'all fish all day long and listen to those beeps and it not drive you insane.
Yeah. You can turn the beeps off too. Um,
I had a feeling you could, but
yeah, I
man,
think you can, but I just kind of like, I don't know. It's music to your ears though. When you lock that thing in, if you're sitting on top of some fish, that's the sound you want to hear. But yeah, this time I didn't even put any motors on there. I knew I was only going to be able to stay for an hour and a half, so I did have my pedals and pedaled around a little bit, but my goal was just to get that one fish, and then I was back at the church before 10 o'clock, so I was back at the church at like 9:50, and then everybody started
okay,
showing up at 10, so I started videoing that. Did that the rest of the day, and then edited the video. Started editing at like 4 o'clock on Saturday, and then they showed it to everybody at 7 o'clock for the nighttime worship. So
nice.
yeah, it was kind of a
It was a rush job, but
yeah. Even
you
though
did
it
a
was
good
only
job,
like a
man.
3.5 minute video, there was so many different clips that you had to go through that it was kind of crazy. And then everybody else thought it was great, but then I look at it and I'm like, oh, this could have been better. That could have been better. That didn't sync up with the music. This didn't sync up with the music here. So I'm nitpicking it apart. Everybody else is like, oh, it's great. I'm like, oh yeah. I'm glad
Yeah.
you think it's great.
Yeah, I know how that is for sure. Whenever I was working as youth pastor, I did a lot of the videos like that, and there were a lot of them that I put together that I felt the same way. Like it,
Oh, yeah.
it was adequate, um, but yeah. So I ended up with that one that was 16 inches, which was enough to put me in 36 out of 65 anglers. Um, so not not as terrible as it could have been, but
Yeah.
it was a tough day. So
Yeah.
that cold front came through Friday night. I actually loaded my car in the pouring rain. Um, so I mean it could have been a lot worse. Um, but yeah, let's see. I was gonna say something else about the tournament, but can't think of what it was.
Yeah.
If it comes to me,
Yeah,
I'll
just looking at the fish that was caught, and looking at I think there was 60, maybe like mid 60, 65, 62 people in it, something like that. There was a lot of really good anglers that didn't catch a fish.
mhm.
A lot of people that fish falls all the time. So I think that cold front, um, I guess not going to falls and not knowing falls. Like I said, if I go, I usually fish the Eno River because I know I can catch some small bass. in a river or creek setting, I'm pretty more confident in that than going and trying to locate something. But I was afraid that would be blown out. I didn't know how much it had rained the night before. I didn't want to drive another 10 or 15 minutes. Barton was closer to me going and closer to the church coming back. So I'm like, if I go to Barton, I can fish for another 20 minutes, 15 minutes. And, but just looking at the people that caught fish and the ones that didn't catch fish, it was a tough day. So hats off to those, that, there were some people that, had their limit and called three times.
Yeah.
So it's always amazing to me, where that's why it's called fishing. You think you have something figured out and then it shifts or, you
Yeah. I think
stumble up on them.
I could be wrong, but I think everyone who got a limit was in the top 10.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
Started going down quick after that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a tough one. But yeah, let's thank a couple more sponsors, and then I want to dive into Merge and let you kind of share what all went down with that.
Sure.
If a fly rod is your weapon of choice, check out Atollas. Their Fly Caddy is the most convenient way to get your favorite flies to the water, or just keep them handy by clipping it to your hat, truck visor, backpack, rod case, or just whatever. You can also bundle it up with flies from independent fly tires that Atollas has teamed up with through their Flylight project. Choose from bundles specializing in redfish, carp, saltwater, or freshwater. Head over to atollas.co, that's ATOLLAS.co, to get your Fly Caddy today and use promo code faithnfish15 to save 15% on your order. That's faith the letter N, fish the number 15 at checkout for 15% off.
A huge selection and crazy fast shipping is already enough to turn heads as an online tackle shop, but Omnia Fishing sets themselves apart with their ambassador program. With Omnia, you can send in fishing reports for your local lakes that recommend baits, structure, tactics, and gear. And when another angler takes your advice and purchases something from your report, you get credit for it to spend at Omnia. The best part means that with Omnia Fishing, you can shop by lake and purchase baits and gear that are proven to work where you're fishing. To get started, go to omniafishing.com and use promo code FNF15 to save 15% on your first order.
All right, so you've already kind of given us like the rundown of what Merge was. So from your perspective, I guess you had kids participating, and you were just kind of there as the filmographer. So,
So for Merge, my involvement in it has several different arms. The first of it being is the church that I attend is Triangle Community Church, which is at the end of Kildare Farm Road, close to Holly Springs. I think the address may actually be Cary, but it's closer to Holly Springs than it is Cary. But Triangle Community Church was the host church, so all the services and stuff was at my church, which me and my wife volunteer quite a bit for the youth program there. We used to teach the elementary hall, Sunday school. We rotated and did about maybe a third of the Sundays to half of the Sundays when our kids were that age. We still volunteer on Wednesday nights now for the high school age kids, have their service and their youth groups on Wednesday night. So we volunteer for that. So we're involved in the youth program, and our church was the host church. So therefore we kind of had some volunteer parts in that. And then our kids also attended that. So our daughter is a junior. So she was at another host family's house. So they go and stay at a host family's house for the weekend. And then they have a leader from the church stays at the host family's house. And then normally they'll have a a younger college age leader that stays at the house too. So there's 2 leaders, and then how many ever students are at each house. And so the host family obviously hosts them. They're responsible for a breakfast on Saturday, and then also some transportation to and from for the kids that are of age that they can't drive. So my daughter was at a host family's house. My son was at our house because we also were a host house as well. So we had kids that attended Merge. I did the video for Merge. We had a couple of volunteer things during the services, and then we were also a host home. So several different things going on there. Shout out to my wife for kind of picking up the slack on Saturday morning, because I left her to fix breakfast for everybody and just was kind of like, hey, you got this. And she was like, hey, I got it. No problem. Go do your thing. And I'll see you there, whenever you get there. And actually, when she got there, I was already at church filming. She was like, oh, you should have stayed at least until lunch. And I was like, well, I didn't want the video to suffer. And if I hadn't caught one by then, I probably would have stayed until lunch trying to catch one. And that's what I told her. I said, it's not going to matter if I stay and catch one more, because the point difference from where I was in the 40s, if I'd have been high 20s or, low 30s catching one more fish, really is not. I just didn't want to zero and not get any points, because this was the only one that I was going to have the chance to. All the other ones lined up during baseball tournaments or softball tournaments, or I think one of them was spring break when we're planning on being out of town. So, but Merge was it's awesome to be involved in activities like that, whether it's volunteering on Sundays for your youth, or even if it's not the youth, doing something at your church. I think, at least for me, helps me stay more involved, and it helps me grow in my faith when I am putting some time and effort into helping the church grow. So just seeing all those kids, and then you hear different stories through the sermons that were preached, and I'm sure that there was a few kids that got saved this weekend, and that's always a huge deal. When you see somebody make that commitment, and so it's just one of those things that I love to do, and I get a lot out of it, and I like to volunteer for stuff like that. Not only do I like helping out, but selfishly, I think it helps me more out. It helps me more than I'm helping them, if that makes any sense at all. And that's kind of selfish to say, but that really helps me grow in my faith as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I say it all the time. If you really want to learn something, teach it.
Yeah.
If you really want to know the ins and outs, teach it. I mean, because you've got to learn everything about it to be able to teach it to somebody else. But yeah, man. So whenever I look at, youth events, I see it from a different perspective than most. As having been someone who has planned those things, been involved on planning teams between multiple church type events, I see a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that does not get seen. But so I don't know. I wasn't there to see this one, but I know, like, just from what you've said, I know how much work went into this. Because it's an interesting balance whenever you're doing this, because you want it to be something that is meaningful. You want it to be something that is, you want the spirit to move and everything, but at the same time, it can be easy to fall into the trap of doing the, how do I put this? Playing the right songs, saying the right things to where you manufacture the spirit moving. because like from a psychology standpoint and from knowing how emotions and how things work, it's very easy to, at an event like this, um, like create the spirit moving and that illusion of the spirit moving, and have this really really emotional time that really, like, you kind of get that um, that illusion of God moving and everything, so that you may have a bunch of people, a bunch of kids come to the altar and cry and everything, but there's really not a lot there to it. Um, and I've seen that happen before. And I don't necessarily think that it's always, I don't think it's always intentional. I think it's just, they've seen that work, so that's what they keep doing.
Right.
And they don't realize that it's not really working from a spiritual standpoint. So it's a very it's a delicate balance. And then there's, the insanely difficult process of getting enough volunteers. Man, getting volunteers is tough. And then uh, you know trying to, just get all of this behind the scenes stuff.
Oh yeah.
Transportation is a big one, especially like if like for this one, everybody's meeting at the same place. Because not every church has a bus or a van. Sometimes, you're carpooling, you're caravanning. Um, I've I've led caravans before. I've done that a lot. One of my favorite stories from being a youth pastor came from being in a caravan. I was driving driving up here uh, to Raleigh to a concert, and I had a few kids in my car, and then a few cars behind me. And um, I'll be honest with you, I've got some road rage issues. Um, I'm usually pretty good at holding my tongue in terms of, not cussing and stuff, but that doesn't mean that I'm not ugly and yelling and saying things. But um, it was one of these uh, places where people are merging, and they don't have a whole lot of time to merge, and somebody merged in front of me and cut me off, and I had to slam on brakes, and then they were not going fast enough for what I was like, and so I was yelling at them saying, "It's the skinny pedal on the right, let's go." And just yelling, and from the back seat I hear, Cam. I was like, "What?" And this little girl about 12 years old goes, um "They can't hear you." Just
Yeah,
puts
but
me in my place, and I'm
it
like,
made
"Yeah,
you feel better though. Yeah,
um,
definitely.
but yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, um, there are definitely parts of that planning process that I really miss, and there are parts of it that I really don't. Um, but yeah, the the seeing it all come together is one of the things that I really miss. You whenever you sometimes you hire a band to do these kinds of things, and you're like, oh man, this was not the right group for this. And then sometimes it's like, yes, they nailed it, they hit it out of the park, God worked through them perfectly. They were willing to let God work through them and everything. Same with the speaker.
Mhm.
Sometimes you hire a speaker that comes in and you're like, oh man, why did I choose this person? And sometimes they come in and they're just like, yes, this was God knew what he was doing when he put
Right.
this one here.
Yeah.
So uh, definitely, uh, definitely miss a lot of the parts of it but not all the parts of it.
Yeah. There's
Um,
definitely a thousand moving pieces to it, and I think there were somewhere around 10 area churches in it that were
so
involved, and so everybody brought volunteers from their church. It was all coordinated very well, and we had plenty of volunteers. Um,
how many students did you end up with?
I I do not know what the total count was. I know that our sanctuary, for lack of a better term, was all the way full with people. Um, so if I had to guess, I would say probably 300. Um, but the music turned out great. Speakers turned out great. Um, all in all, it was a great weekend, and we caught a fish, and we got our points, and so now it's on to the next thing, the next weekend. Um, so we got Harris coming up on Saturday for CKA. It's one of the ones I do get to fish with them. So I'm looking forward to that. That's if I have to call a home lake, it would be Harris. Although it's been pretty stingy the last 3 years or so, I used to could go there and whack them pretty good every time I went. And honestly, in the last 3 years, I've been fishing a lot of different stuff and not going there as much. And I really haven't put the time or effort in to figure out the new dynamic that um, that lake has now, because they sprayed all the hydrilla, and there's not a lot of hydrilla left on it. So that it really changed the dynamic of it. People can still go there and whack them and catch big, huge bags, just not me. So we'll see. We'll see how Saturday goes. I have a plan. I haven't fished it at all this year, and I'm not going to be able to fish it tomorrow. So we're recording this on a Thursday. So tomorrow's Friday. I was hoping to try to pre-fish a little bit either today or tomorrow, but that's not going to happen. So I'm just going to roll in there and go to some old history spots and, uh, you know, cross my fingers and throw a little wacky rig and black and blue chatterbait, since this is coming out afterwards. That's my game plan. So
I hear you. Yeah, usually the way Harris usually goes for me is usually good for one big one.
yeah, that's
I
what
don't
it's good.
usually I don't
Yep.
usually catch many. Now, every now and then I'll get on a bite where I'm like, here's 15, 10 inches. But most of the time there's 1 5 pounder.
Yep. That's how it's been for me for the last few years, is one or two nice ones, and that's really the only bites I would get all day,
Mm-hmm.
because I fish it like it still had hydrilla, you know, and it doesn't, and I don't go enough, haven't been there enough to really graph all the stuff that's offshore where people are catching them at now.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
I didn't get to go when it had hydrilla in it. But um, but yeah, I typically uh, main thing I do is I in the spring or in the late spring, early summer, I throw like gold, a lot of gold because I'm trying to imitate baby carp because man, that lake has some carp.
it's got a bunch of them.
Um, I, a lot of them. I sit there and sometimes like whenever I launch from the park, whenever I'm coming back in, I'll sit there and just watch those carp fishermen that are there on that high bank underneath the power lines.
Yeah,
And they're just pulling in, you know,
they're big.
like I was gonna say, between 5 and 15 pound carp, one after the other.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of them in there. So
I've
I think
seen.
that went along with the hydrilla plan. I think what I remember, 5 or so years ago, they put 50,000 carp in there. So that's the reason
Well,
there's so many carp.
Well,
And at the same time, that changed the whole behavior of the bass just because the carp they weren't there, and now they are. So that's kind of switched everything up too. And then they eat. If hydrilla does try to come up, they munch it down.
yeah, the grass carp that are in there, I don't know if they've restocked grass carp because grass carp are typically sterile. They don't typically breed. Um, but the grass carp that I have seen in there are, I mean, monstrous.
Yeah.
I I've seen some that were probably, four, four and like 4 feet long or plus. I
Yeah.
mean, just monstrous.
Oh yeah, because every time, if you're sitting there and you catch a glimpse out of the corner of your eye, you're like, "Oh, that's a oh hell no, that's a carp." Because you can see them and just catch them out of your corner of your eye. And then there are the times where you roll up into a cove and then you do see 4 or 5 big 4 or 5 pound bass that are sunning. And if they're sunning like that, I can't get them to bite anything. I can sit there and watch them all day, but they will not bite anything you throw at them. So I don't know. I hope that's not the case this weekend. I think there's going to be some. I think there's going to be some big fish caught, and I think whoever wins it will have over 100. I think
I,
it's going to
I
be over
agree.
100
I
because
think
there's going to be some bedding fish, and I think there's already been some people there probably scoping it out, have some beds marked, and there's going to be a shallow slugfest. I think.
yeah, I don't know that they're going to be they're not going to be spawning yet, but they're going to be making those beds.
Mm,
And I think the bucks are going to be up shallow on those spawning flats, and the big females are going to be just off those spawning flats on those drop offs right next to those spawning flats.
yep.
And I think the people, whoever finds them, you're right, they're going to be 100 plus.
Yep, I think so. So, I'm just hoping to catch 5. That's always my goal. Catch 5. You catch 5, you're going to do all right in these
Yeah.
local trails. So hopefully I can catch 5, and then cross my fingers I can catch the 5 right ones. So I need a good finish. I need to pay for some of this. I need to recoup some of my money back. Some.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, let's thank a couple more sponsors, and then we'll close things out.
Sounds good.
Mr. B Lure Company is making high quality handcrafted lures and has been for 30 years right here in the U.S. Using all metal components, Owner and Gamakatsu hooks, and silicone or frog hair skirts, Mr. B is pumping out some awesome spinner baits, jigs, buzz baits, underspins, and more, including some of the most unique bladed jigs on the market. To fill up your tackle box, go to MrBLureCompany.com, that's MRBLureCompany.com, and use promo code faithnfishnpod1x10 at checkout to save 10% on your first order. That's Faith the letter N, Fish the letter N, P-O-D, so Faith and Fishing Pod, just like our Instagram handle, 1x10.
Get Outdoors Pedal and Paddle is one of the largest canoe, kayak, and cycling retailers in the Southeast, with a huge selection of kayaks, canoes, bikes, and all the accessories needed to experience paddling and cycling comfortably and safely. Get Outdoors helps to expand and educate the paddling community through their free demos held on local lakes in the Greensboro, North Carolina area, and through in-store clinics and on-the-water courses and demos. And we'll even get your new boat rigged up for kayak fishing for you. Stop by the shop in Greensboro, North Carolina, or check out shopgetoutdoors.com to be wowed by their selection.
All right. So, we were talking about this coming weekend. I will not be able to fish Harris this weekend. I told everyone at the weigh-in that for this past tournament that I was on call this weekend. I am actually not on call this weekend, but I am. It's next weekend that I go on call, but but I do have my my nephew's birthday party. He's turning 2. He and my son are 3 weeks apart, so
That's cool.
definitely gonna be spending time there, because family definitely trumps fishing. But yeah, everybody who's fishing Harris, I'm definitely hoping that they're going to be staying safe, and I'm definitely going to be paying attention because, like you said, I think there's going to be some big bass. Because I mean, tomorrow it's going to be in the low to mid 80s. So between
Got
these
pretty
longer
warm today
days,
too.
and these this big warming trend, I have a feeling that that the person who finds them is going to find them big.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, let's see. I think that's a good way to wrap it up, man. You want to close us out in prayer and then close us
Yeah.
out?
Yeah. Sounds good, man.
All right.
Hey, dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for uh, thank you for allowing us to do this podcast and reach people, um, and share your word and a little bit of our experience, and hopefully help guide people towards you, um, through what we say and our stories and actions. And thank you for the outdoors and allowing us to fish and um, allowing that to bring us closer to you. Uh, Thank you for looking over this past weekend with all the youth and everyone that attended Merge. And please let that work on everyone's hearts moving forward. And please forgive us of our sins. And in Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
What you got? Is that it?
Yeah, that was it. I was gonna let you close it out from there.
Yeah. Hey, thank you for joining us. Join us again next week. I don't even know who we're scheduled to have on, but it's going to be somebody good. If not, you just get us again, which hey, that may be the best deal anyway, right? I kind of like it when it's just me and you. We get to talk about some local stuff and talk about our faith a little bit more. I kind of like the sequence we have going on. We have a few guests on, and we have a show or so with just me and Cam. So, man, I'm enjoying this. I hope everybody that's listening is, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to the Faith and Fishing podcast. Faith and Fishing is produced and hosted by Cam Steele and Robert Randolph, and is sponsored by Savior Outdoors, Jay's Jigs, Get Outdoors Pedal and Paddle, Mr. B Lure Company, Atollas, and Omnia Fishing. Don't forget to join the Facebook community, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe, rate, and review us on whatever app you're listening on. That's going to do it for this episode. Y'all take care, and God bless.